Huh?
That's the echo. It's the playback in the kitchen.
Okay. Welcome to Parshat Balak. And Reb Shlomo points out that even though the Parsha is named Balak, it's really very much about Bilam. Right? And he goes into discussing how come the rabbis portray Bilam in a very, very negative way, extremely negative way. Because when you read the text alone, it's not so easy to see. Like he seems to be like a pretty I'm not putting on the air conditioner because my neck hurts. From the text alone, Bilam doesn't seem to be such a terrible character. You know, maybe he's not a nice guy, but so. Can you pass me the tea, Mr. Shem? And yet, the rabbis make a point and they say, whatever you can find wrong with Bilam, expound on it. Expound on it. Which is not something that they do usually. They don't usually do that. You know? They don't usually do that. So what is it about Bilam that makes him so horrible, right? No, on the one hand, there's a teaching in the Gemara that says, and there's a verse in the Chumash that says, "Lo kam b'Yisrael ki Navi od, lo kam Navi od b'Yisrael ki Moshe." There was no prophet in Israel on the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. So the Gemara says, yeah, among the Jews there was no prophet on his level, but among the Gentiles there was, and that was Bilam. So Bilam is like, he's considered to be like on par with Moshe Rabbeinu in terms of prophecy, right? As a matter of fact, he's the only, other than Moshe Rabbeinu, is the only prophet that we read his words of prophecy in the Torah, right? Nobody else. Okay. So that makes the question even more pertinent. So why make him into such schmutz? You know, why are the rabbis portraying him as being the most disgusting lowlife and so on? So Reb Shlomo also goes on to say that you know, if you look at his prophecy, he's not only prophesying about the near future, he's prophesying about what's going to happen at the end of days as well, right? There's a verse in which he says, "Derach Chav Yaakov," and these are great prophecies which were not spoken by Moshe Rabbeinu. He sees to the end of days. He knows the secrets of the world. He's in contact with God. Hashem speaks with him, right? So that's pretty amazing, right? So the rabbis go out and they make Bilam into a real lowlife, right? And the verse where his donkey says, when the God opens the mouth of the donkey, and the donkey says, "Have I treated you like this in the past?" And the rabbis say basically that he used to commit bestiality with his donkey. You know, he's a real lowlife. So what's it about? So there's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avot in chapter 5, Mishnah 19, where the Mishnah says, what's the difference between the students of Avram Avinu and the students of Bilam? And why does the Mishnah say, what's the difference between the students of Avram compared to the students of Bilam? Why not, the wicked Bilam, why not just say, what's the difference between Avram Avinu and Bilam? Right? So one of the commentaries explains that sometimes you cannot tell what a person is really all about until you see what his students were like. It's from the students that you see what they got from him. So the Mishnah says, what's the difference between Avraham Avinu and students and Bilam's, the wicked Bilam students? So the Mishnah says the disciples of our father Abraham possess a good eye, a humble spirit, and a meek soul. The students of the wicked Bilam possess an evil eye, an arrogant spirit, and a greedy soul. So what's being discussed over here is we're discussing when the Mishnah says a person, the students of Abraham have ayin tova, good eye, ruach nemucha, humble spirit, and a meek soul. What's being described? What's being described is their character, their perception of self, right? Whereas Bilam students have an evil eye, and so if you think about it, what's the difference between a good eye and an evil eye, right? In Hebrew, they took a Yiddish word which they put into Hebrew. You know which one I'm talking about? Lefargein. You know what the word lefargein means? You know the word lefargein?
It's like to share in somebody's joy.
So if somebody's mefargein, that means that somebody else, something good happens to your friend, and you're happy for him. Somebody who's not mefargein, in Yiddish the word is farginin. You can ask your wife tonight. And if you say somebody vergint nicht, means that he can't stand that somebody else has something instead of him, right? Even if he himself has a whole bunch. So that's the fargen. An evil eye is that he sees what another person has, and it bothers him that that he doesn't have it, right? An arrogant spirit means he's thinking about himself. It's all about him. And a greedy soul means that he wants, and this is based on the fact that further on in the Parsha, when Balak gets all upset, have you read the Parsha already? Have you read the Parsha? Are you familiar with it? Yeah? Right? He takes Bilam to different locations and tries to get Bilam to curse the Jewish people, and every time it turns into blessings. And then and he says to Bilam, what's going on? I didn't hire you to bless the people, I hired you to curse the people. And Bilam says, can you pass me this? Finish the second one. Bilam says, even if you were to give me your full house of silver, right? I can't go against the words of God. So what do you see from that verse? Even if you were to give me your full house of silver, where are his eyes? His eyes are on somebody else's money, right? And right, it's in verse chapter 24, verse 13. Even if Balak were to give me his full house of silver and gold, lo ochal avo epi Hashem. So you see that there's a greedy person here, right? He's talking about himself. He's concerned about himself. So Steinsaltz explains that the problem that philosophers deal with, which I imagine Barak is well aware of, being the philosopher that you are.
Never studied philosophy.
Right? Is that there's this world and there's a supernal world. There's a higher world, right? You come to Rabbi Sutton's classes, you know all about that, right? And the question is there a bridge between the two? So he says the difference between Bilam and the religious person is that, as far as the philosopher is concerned, is I exist. So how could it be that there's a God? The religious thinker thinks there's a God. So how is it that I exist? Okay? In other words, what's your starting point? What are you thinking about? Are you thinking about yourself, and then maybe you'll figure out how there could be some room for God in your life? Or are you thinking about that there's a God? How is it that the world exists within God? And how do we connect with God? So they're both dealing with the same problem. How do you bridge the two? But the difference is in perspective, right? It's the perspective, like, I'm the primary reality, and how could there be something else? Or is God is the primary reality, and how could we be here? So Bilam, right? Bilam is Reb Shlomo also describes him. He's a great philosopher. He's a great theologian. He knows about God tremendously, right? But it doesn't make any change in his personal life. It doesn't change the way he relates with the world. It doesn't change his behavior. He's still a low life. I once heard, because I don't read much, but I heard that some of the greatest literary figures were also, like, who wrote beautiful literature and poetry and so on, but they were all low lives. There's a story that once, when the Greeks came to Israel, so they invited the rabbis to come and see one of their plays, and apparently literature you did study. You studied literature. You studied literature. I mean, these Greek tragedies are famous, right? They're deep. They're brilliant. They're this and that. And the story that the Gemara tells us that when the play was over, so it was an impressive play, and then there was like sort of like a post, a little party afterwards, and the playwright was talking with a critic, and the critic sort of put down the play a little bit, and the playwright took a knife and he killed him. Right? In other words, what the rabbis are illustrating is that you can be a brilliant author, you can be a deep thinker, and so on. It doesn't mean that you're going to be a good person. You can sit and talk about God on a very, very high level and meditate on God on a very deep level, etc., etc. And you can just sit there and you can say, "Wow, I'm really brilliant. My understanding of God is way beyond what anybody else gets," right? And so, in a certain sense, the story of Bilam is an important story for every one of us, in the sense of, so I learned a beautiful piece of Torah, so I learned Mishnah, so I learned Talmud, right? And now what? What difference did it make? What are you taking home? You went to shul and you heard this rabbi who's an amazing orator, and he's giving a great talk and so on. And so what are you taking home? Like everybody at the Kiddush will talk about, wow, the rabbi's speech. You've seen this, you've seen such things. You never hung around for Kiddush? Huh?
Only when you speak.
They used to go to a big shul there in Miami,
Oh, yeah, that's what you're talking about?
I'm talking about,
Yeah,
like,
that's what people would say. I don't know why.
like they were talking about the rabbi's speech and so on. But you know the story about this this rabbi is trying out for a job in a shul, a big shul, and Friday night he gives a talk about keeping kosher. Anyway, later in the evening, so the senior rabbi says to him, "Listen, the president of the men's club felt uncomfortable with your talk. You gave a great talk about keeping kosher, but he likes to order Chinese, and so please don't raise that topic anymore." The next day, he gives a talk about, um, modesty or something like that. Again, a great talk. Again, the senior rabbi says to him, "Listen, the ladies' auxiliary wasn't very happy with your talk. They felt uncomfortable. They don't get me wrong. It was a great delivery, great content, but they felt a little bit uncomfortable with it." And so on, and then he gave another talk, and again, the same thing was, so he says, "So what should I talk about?" So the rabbi says, "Talk about Judaism." Right?
Good.
You understand? Talk about Judaism. Like in other words, don't talk in a way, it's just, keep it philosophical, And we have, we have a Yetzer Hara, we have that problem. And the issue is, okay, so I learned, like, I sometimes I imagine that one day when I'm going to be upstairs, if Mashiach doesn't come before, I imagine Hashem taking out a recording or two of talks that I gave. Hashem's going to say, "Wow, that was really good, Shalom." And what happened after? It's a little bit scary, if you think about that. So you learn this. So the attribute of dat, Chochmah Bina dat. Chochmah is wisdom, right? Bina is understanding. So, for example, Chochmah is like, for example, the little chip with all the wisdom in it. For example, like with the entire Talmud and everything that you can have on a chip today, right? Bina is the software with which to unwrap it. Okay, so that you can see what it is, you can read it, you can study it, and so on. And that, which is usually translated as knowledge, right, and not incorrectly, but misunderstood. You see, the common usage of the word knowledge is, yeah, I know that, but that's not the way that is used in the Torah. The way that is used in the Torah is, what is this knowledge? What change is it making in your life? What difference is it making in your life? How are you applying this information? And why do I say that it's like that in the Torah? Because it says, "Adam yada et Chava." Adam knew Chava. What does it say right after that? And she gave birth, right? In other words, he connected with her. That means you're connecting with the knowledge, with the wisdom, and it produces, it makes a change in your life. That's that. Okay. Somebody in Chabad put out a book on the Sfirot, and on his chapter, I didn't read the book, but I happened to notice the title of his chapter on Das. So the little line that he has over there is, "The doctor who smokes has no Das." In other words, he knows all about it, right? But it doesn't make a difference in his life. So so it's possible to have a Gentile prophet who can have the same level of prophecy like Moshe Rabbeinu, and he still remains a wicked person. It has to be possible because Hashem created a world in which we have free choice, right? And if only the Jews would have the great prophets, so then the rest of the world would basically say, well, wait a minute, you didn't give us that kind of a prophecy, right? So Hashem gives them also that level of prophecy and gives them a bilam. But the point is you can have this and you still could be a Russian, right? And for ourselves, the lesson is, yeah, I could learn Torah, and it doesn't mean that I'm going to be a better person, right? And if I want to be a better person as a result of what I'm learning, I have to make a serious effort to take what I'm learning and apply it in my life, right? Somebody can give a great shir on prayer and on davening, what it's all about, and what kavanah is to have, etc., etc. But when it comes down to davening, he's not going to sit down and make the effort to actually apply what he just spoke about. So he'll daven like a machine if he's going to daven it out. He'll daven like a tape recorder, right? So that's why, as a matter of fact, the Friedrich Rebbe, and tomorrow night is Yud Beis Tammuz, right? Today was Yud Aleph, no? Tomorrow night is the Farbrengen. You can catch the Farbrengen tomorrow night. Friedrich Rebbe was
tonight. Marzel's tonight.
Okay, maybe Marzel's second, but usually they celebrate Yud Beis Yud Gimel. In any case, the Friedrich Rebbe, somebody showed me in one of his writings. He talks about people who fress pages and pages of Talmud. You know what it means to fress?
Devour.
Huh?
Devour,
right? What it means, but devour, like, if somebody's a fresser, like,
okay.
Right? As a matter of fact, in Montreal, there's a restaurant called Fressers. Literally, I'm not joking. And you walk by there, and you see, like, big size people, like, unbelievable, And they see,
Kosher restaurant?
It's a Jewish style.
Kosher style.
And that's the same discussion that we had back in Vayikra and Parshat Kedoshim. Kedoshim Tihiyu. And the Talmud says, what does it mean to be kadosh? Kadosh et asmecha b'ma shemutar lecha. Sanctify yourself in those things that are permissible to you, right? So you're eating kosher food and it has every hechsher that you possibly could want. But if you're a glutton, it's not kadosh, right? And so this is the point of one of the major points of this parsha, and it's interesting because the Jews didn't know that all this was happening at the time. Nobody actually saw Bilam at the time, right? He was up there on a mountain looking down at the Jewish encampment. The Eden didn't know that there's somebody up there, some powerful spiritual being who's trying to do them in with his curses, right? If not for the fact that the Torah tells us the story, we wouldn't know it. We wouldn't have known this, right? So one of the things that it teaches us is that sometimes people think, where's God? Is he taking care of us? He's taking care of us. He's taking care of us. He's there all the time. There's this ancient parable, I don't know what the source of it is that this guy is walking with God and and there's two sets of footprints. Then at some point, there's only one set of footprints. And the guy's looking at, at the journey that he was on. And he says to God, well, where were you at this point? There's only one set of footprints. And Hashem tells him, yeah, those are my footprints. I was carrying you. I was carrying you, right? So sometimes we think like, where's Hashem? Hashem is here all the time. Hashem is very, very concealed. And also at the end of the parsha, right? You also see that what kind of a low life Bilam is, because he doesn't succeed in bringing about the downfall of the Jews by trying to curse them. So what does he end up doing is he advises Balak to send out the Midianite girls to go and seduce the Jews sexually and then lead them into idolatry. Right? So,
That one works.
That one worked, right? So the parsha ends up with a big tragedy, right? And then continues into Parshas Pinchas. So the lesson to me is not that you can have a Gentile prophet who's a great theologian and philosopher and still be a wicked person. The lesson to us is we better watch out. We can end up being the same. So so everything that we do, everything that we learn, we need to say, okay, I've learned this. How am I going to apply it in my life? And how am I going to apply it in my life? Am I going to be a better person? Am I going to give more tzedakah? Will I be more careful not to speak Lashon Hara? Will I be more careful not to listen to Lashon Hara? Will I devote more time to studying Torah, etc.? That's the real issue. It's like, the Chabad Shliach in Rehovot. You may have met him once. Mendel Glukovsky. Have you ever met him? He's also the head of the Beis Din there. He's originally from Toronto, very special man. So I once heard him tell the story at a Farbrengen that when he was a bocher or whatever it is, he came to visit Eretz Yisrael, and he's obviously a very talented person, and he was given some, either he was asked or he wasn't asked to, whatever it is. In any case, he visited all these Lubavitcher institutions here in Eretz Yisrael, and he wrote like a 32-page report about what he saw, what's good, what needs to be improved, etc. And when he went back to New York, he handed it into the Rebbe. And every day he's going into the Rebbe's office, to the secretariat, to find out. So did the Rebbe reply? Did the Rebbe reply? And every day they say, no reply. Anyway, finally, it's already time for him to go back either to Israel or wherever he was going. And he's literally in the car already to go to the airport. And his brother shouts down from the second floor window, "They just called from the Rebbe's office. The Rebbe replied to your report, to your letter. Go pick it up." So on the way to the airport, he goes and picks it up. And what does he get? He gets his 32 pages that he had written. And the Rebbe's reply at the end of it all was one word, a 2-letter word. Nu. In other words, what are you going to do about it? And also Rabbi Dr. Lord Jonathan Sachs has a similar story. Like
That's the right order?
Huh?
That's the right order?
No, Sachs Jonathan, Rabbi Dr. Lord, whatever it is. Anyway, he as a young man, he was already known. He was known as you've heard of him, yeah? He was known as like one of these up and coming big Jewish leaders and so on. And he was visiting America, and he had these questions, and he was meeting with the leaders of all these Jewish federations and foundations and this and that. And everywhere that he went, he was asking them all these questions about, what are you doing about intermarriage? What are you doing about this? And what are you doing about that? And he came to meet the Rebbe, and he starts to interview the Rebbe. What are you doing about this? What are you doing about this? And the Rebbe said to him, what are you doing about it? What are you doing about it? Right? That was the Rebbe's response to him. And then the Rebbe said to him, and you go to this famous university and so on. What are you doing to enhance Jewish student life? Or what do you plan to do? So he started his answer by saying, well, if circumstances will allow, the Rebbe stopped him right then and there, and he says, no, you create the circumstances. You create the circumstances. In other words, it's not a matter of which circumstances will allow you. You create the circumstances. Right? So, sometimes people think that, if I would have the deep wisdom that the rabbi has, or the deep wisdom that this holy person has, I would also be a great servant of God. You ever had that thought? I have. Mm. Right? That's, but right? But sometimes people think, if I would have a much more brilliant mind, like the guy sitting next to me does, or if I would have been born into the same kind of family that this person was born into, I would also be sitting and studying 10 hours a day. But I wasn't born into that kind of thing, and so on, right? Well, first of all, you should know, the Gemara says, Kol hagadol mechavero yitzcho gadol hemenu. Whoever is greater than his fellow also has a bigger Yetzer Hara. In other words, don't think that these people became successful in their learning and in their Yiddishkeit without a major struggle. They had a major struggle. You know the Medrash about Moshe Rabbeinu? I just saw it again tonight. The story is that there was this old king who he had a collection of portraits of all the kings of the world, and he also visited all of them. But then he was already older, and he heard about Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was at one point, according to the Medrash, king in Ethiopia. During those 40 years that he had fled from Mitzrayim, and but the king was old, and he couldn't go visit Moshe Rabbeinu. So he sent the portrait artists. You know this one?
I've heard it, I don't remember it.
He sent the portrait artists. Portrait artist comes back, and he shows the portrait to the king. And this king knew what's called chokhmat hapartzuf. He knew how to read faces. And he looks at the portrait, and he sees that this is a portrait of a man that has every evil character trait that one could have. And he had heard that Moshe Rabbeinu was a great, holy, righteous person. So he says to the artist, "You're a liar," and he executed him. So he sends another artist to go find Moshe Rabbeinu.
Dangerous job.
He sends another artist to go find Moshe Rabbeinu. The other artist arrives at Moshe Rabbeinu, and he takes a look at him, and he sees that the portrait that this other artists had drawn was actually accurate. So he goes up to Moshe Rabbeinu and he says to him, "I've got this dilemma now. If I'm going to make a portrait of you, my king will kill me just like he killed the previous artist, because Your face has your face betrays every bad character flaw that a person could have. Moshe Rabbeinu says, yes, I was born with every bad character flaw. And I managed to transform it. Right? That's real Gevurah. Like the Mishnah says, Ezehu Gibor, who is a mighty person, Hakovesh et Yisrael, one who conquers his evil inclination. So don't think that if I was, if I would have been born into the family of this holy family, I would also be a holy person. If I would have been born as the son of some tzaddik, I would be a tzaddik. No guarantee. Maybe he would have been the biggest criminal in town. Don't ask for somebody else's Yeshua Hara. It's enough that you got to deal with your own, right? And don't think that a big person doesn't have the Yeshua Hara. And on the contrary, you have an even bigger Yeshua Hara than everybody else. You might think of going and shoplifting a package of gum. These guys don't think about shoplifting a package of gum. For them, it's the Great Train Robbery. You know about the Great Train Robbery in England? You know about it. You've heard of it. Okay, for somebody with a big Yetzer Hara, he's not interested in the package of gum, These guys, like Reb Shlomo says, they dress like you, they wear the same cologne that you wear, they're as sophisticated as you are, and for them it's like, let's push a button and see how many people we can kill with this push of a button, type of thing. There's no connect between the intelligence and the soul. Okay? So I was looking into the Sefer of one of the Rishner Rebbes, one of the Rebbes from the Rishner dynasty. And in fact, somebody showed me this week that a similar teaching in Rabbi Nachman, Kuf Nun Hey, by davening. Can you give me the Rabbi Nachman behind you? It's lying flat, the silver one. So they're both talking about emunah, faith. And Reb Nachman says that faith, emunah, is the ground for your prayers. If you have faith, then your prayers will be productive. If you're davening and properly, right? If somebody's not davening properly because of his sadness and of his laziness and so on, it's because he lacks the faith to believe that his davening is relevant. Right? Like if you're talking to somebody and you think it's not going to make a difference, so you're not how much effort are you going to be putting into your words? You familiar with this one?
No, but I've heard this claim from people.
So Reb Nachman says, he gives an example. Let's say you put a grain of wheat into a good piece of earth. So then it grows, it sprouts and it grows beautifully. And it's safe from harmful winds and bugs and so on, right? Why? Because it has good energy from being in a good plot of earth, right? But if you put the same grain into a poor piece of earth, right? It's not going to grow very well, and it's going to be very subject to disease and to being destroyed by poor weather conditions and so on, right? Because it's not in a good. It's in a piece of earth. It's in a plot of earth which is lacking the minerals, and it's a poor piece of earth, right? So therefore, so where is the power for the grain to grow coming from? It's coming from the earth, right? So he says similarly, faith is the power which makes your prayers productive. If there's no emunah, so you could be saying the same words as the guy next to you, but his words might be productive and your words, chas v'sholom, might not. And the difference is not in the words that you said. The difference is what kind of spiritual soil did you put your words into? Did you put them into a rich soil or into a poor soil? Are you praying with faith that Hashem cares and is listening? Or are you just rattling off the prayers just because you're accustomed to doing it, you were trained to do it, and so on? There's a joke that was going around a while ago was somebody says to his friend, "So did you daven?" And he says, "Well, I can say I davened, but I was yoyse. I don't have to repeat it. I fulfilled my obligation." Right? It's a sad joke, but it's but you get it, right? So he says, if we daven with vitality, the way we should, and you travel to the tzaddik, then you won't be afraid of anything in the world. But if there's a lack of faith, then you don't have then you're lacking, and that person is lacking the energy for things to grow. And then the seed just rots and doesn't produce. And so the guy davens, his prayers aren't answered, so he goes into deeper sadness. Hashem, you're not answering my prayers. So it's so critical that to daven, and before davening, to think about your emunah, your faith in Hashem, and to daven to focus on your faith in Hashem, and to daven with faith. So the Sadigerer, I think it is, from the Rishon dynasty, he speaks about that there's emunah before doing something, before doing a mitzvah, and there's emunah afterwards. So emunah beforehand is plain and simple. I believe that Hashem gave me this mitzvah, and Hashem wants me to do it, and to do it as best as I can, and go ahead and do it. And faith after the mitzvah is wow, Hashem is so much greater than I ever imagined. Whatever I did so far is just almost like nothing. And I want to do more. I want to do more. So basically, to sort of sum it all up, we didn't read any text tonight, but you'll read the Parsha, is that A, is to know that there are evil forces working against the Jewish people pretty much at all times. Sometimes it's more revealed, sometimes it's less revealed. Nowadays, it's pretty revealed. Right? The anti-Semitism that we see in Europe and in the United Nations. And, I heard that back in 1947, Shabbos morning, a Yid walked into 770 early in the morning. The Rebbe was walking around. He was being Maver Sedra. He was reading the Parsha. It was an hour or two before Shachris. And he comes over to the Rebbe and he says, Mazel Tov, the United Nations voted for the establishment of a Jewish homeland. So the Rebbe said to him, is the world out there doing tshuva? And the man said no. So then the Rebbe said, it doesn't mean anything. And, Netanyahu, when he spoke at the United Nations, he told the story about that when he became ambassador to the U.S., he went to visit, ambassador to the United Nations, he went to visit the Rebbe, and the Rebbe told him, you're going into a house of lies, but you have to always remember the Hasidic aphorism that even a little bit of light dispels a lot of darkness. So we have to keep on bringing light into the world. And this UNESCO is, they voted that Israel doesn't have any sovereignty over Yerushalayim. It's like day in, day out. I read a report that was about, the numbers might not be exactly accurate, but there's something like 200 foreign journalists in Israel, or 195, compared with 5 covering the rest of the Middle East. Why are there so many journalists? Because everybody's watching. What are the Jews doing? What are the Jews doing? And they're looking for any excuse they can find to make the Jews look bad. So, why am I saying this? There are forces of evil out there. Some are revealed, some are concealed, right? And what we need to know is that Hashem is with us all the time. And like Bilam says in his prophecy about the end of days, that all the nations of the world are going to, all the cultures, all the civilizations are basically going to crumble, and the only ones that will be left will be the Jewish people. Not that the Goyim are going to disappear, but their whole ideology and everything is going to pretty much crumble, but the Jews will remain. And then the Mashiach is going to come, and all the nations of the world, like Yeshayahu says, all the nations of the world will stream like rivers to Yerushalayim, saying that they also want to serve Hashem. The other thing is to remember that it's beautiful to learn, and it's beautiful to go to a good shir, or to read something beautiful. But at the end, I have to ask myself, what am I going to do with this information? How am I going to apply it? So there's one line of Bilam's prophecy that's extremely famous that you say every single day in davening. What is it? Rashi says, how wonderful are your tents, Jacob, your dwelling place is Israel. And Rashi says, what impressed him so much? What impressed him so much was that he saw the entrance of one tent did not face the entrance of another tent, which we usually interpret it to mean that it's a matter of tzniut, a matter of modesty. People weren't looking into each other's homes, right? And that's a very important lesson. Reb Shlomo says an interesting thing. He says, if you look at yourself and you ask yourself, who are my friends? You'll find, for most people, we're friends with people who share our ideology. If you're a politician, you're going to be friends with those people who vote for you, or you're going to be friends with people that vote for the same party as you do, eat the same hechsher as you do, go to the same bank, go to the same bakery. And what happens when your friend drops all that and starts going his own way, right? What happens to the friendship? Usually, what happens?
It ends.
Huh?
It ends.
It ends, right? So, what Rashi is talking about is like this. the symbolism of tents, the opening of one tent facing the opening of another tent, symbolizes I'm looking into your house and you're looking into my house. And so long as I'm pleased with what you see, with what I see in your house. And hi everybody out there. Let's show you the names of people who are listening. Anyway, so long as I'm pleased with what I see in your home, and you're pleased with what you see in my home, so then, okay, we're good friends, right? But what Bilam saw was that the entrance of one tent didn't face the entrance of another tent. He saw that the unity of the Jewish people was so superior, it didn't depend on whether I was going to be happy with what I see in your house, and you're being happy with what you see in my house. He saw that it was clear that we mamish loved each other. So in Shachris, in the Siddur, when we say in the morning, Ma tov v'elecha Yaakov, which is to be said as you walk into shul, and you may have seen a lot of shuls, maybe not so much anymore, but I remember as a kid, there was a big shul in Montreal with a big arch over the entrance, and it had engraved in it, Ma tov v'elecha Yaakov. You've seen such things? You know, how wonderful are your tents, Yaakov, and your dwelling place is Israel. So the reason behind that is that the Gemara says that Bilam wanted to see the destruction of, he wanted that the Beis Hamikdash should be destroyed. And every shul is called a Mishkan Ma'at, a small Mishkan, you know. So when you're walking into shul, you know, like, he wanted to curse us, and Hashem turned it into a blessing, and to realize that this is part of the blessing that Hashem gave the Jewish people, that we will always have some form of a mishkan, some form of a holy space. But if you look in the Nusach Hari Siddur, right before Matar v'Olecho Yaakov, it says, Nachon lomar kodem hatfilah. It's appropriate to say before davening. It's appropriate to say, Hareini mekabel olai mitzvot aseh shel ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You've seen that in the Siddur? I accept upon myself the positive mitzvah of love your fellow as yourself. Okay? So, in a certain sense, Matoivu Alechu Yaakov is explaining to us in what way I'm supposed to fulfill loving my fellow. And even if my fellow Yid is not doing the things that I do, even if maybe he's very, very far from Torah and mitzvahs, I need to love him. He's my brother, she's my sister. And the Frierdiker Rebbe emphasized, the Rebbe used to say, he was against people using the term kiruv v'choikim, bringing those who are far away, bringing them close. He said there is no such thing as a Jew who is far away. Every Jew is close. Every Jew, every Yehudi is carrying the name of Hashem. But kiruv to Torah and to mitzvahs, and every Yid has a neshama, and the neshama's nourishment comes from Torah and mitzvahs. And if, for example, a poor man shows up and says, I'm hungry, right? You don't give them a lecture about bread and why they should eat. You give them a piece of bread. You meet a Yid whose neshama is hungry for Torah and mitzvahs, give them a mitzvah to do. Put on tefillin with them, give them some Shabbos candles, give them some money to give to tzedakah, give them a mitzvah to do. and do this without being judgmental of them in the slightest whatsoever. No, don't be judgmental. You don't know. Could be this person is eating an all-dressed pizza on Yom Kippur, and it could be that this person did one mitzvah that outweighs everything that you did for the last 25 years. So we're not fit or capable of making these judgments, right? So the avodah is to achieve real Ahavat Yisrael, to achieve real love of fellow Jews. I went to Harim Yochot a couple of nights ago to do some davening at the kever of Reb Shlomo, and it was late at night, and I needed to get home, so I called two taxi companies. They said we don't send anybody there at this time of night. Anyway, Baruch Hashem, I got a ride with this Haredi Jew. We talked a little bit, and I told him we have a yeshiva called Simchat Shlomo, named after Reb Shlomo Carlebach. You should have seen his reaction. He said, Reb Shlomo, what a Ahavas Yisrael. He had so much love for every Jew, and he did. He was mamish exceptional. So the Avodah is Ahavas Yisrael. That's when we love each other the way we should, then our biggest enemies end up saying, Matoivu Elecho Yaakov V'Shkenazecha Yisrael. So we should always be blessed with real Ahavas Yisrael and Shalom Yisrael. Thank you. Okay, Ari, Rachel, Leora, Yaakov Lewis, Shalom Aleichem. Thanks for joining us.